Okay, thank you so much for being here. I will be talking about religious fictionalism, and I will pose a challenge for religious fictionalism, and I will try to defend this challenge from a religious fictionalism view. I will briefly present what religious fictionalism is, and then I will explain my challenge based on other previous challenge from religious fictionalism, and then I will try to defend this religious fictionalism from an immaterialist view. And if I have time, I will explain two possible criticisms that my view perhaps have. Okay. The religious fictionalism is based on the philosophy of language discussion in the sense about to discussing if the religious sentence have meaning, if they are referential or they are not referential, and discussing sentence like one that says God created the universe, and they are discussing if this kind of sentence have really meaning, or they are non-reducible, or they are reducible. Uh, if the religious realism is defended in the sense that the uh, religious sentence are truth up, non-reducible, and they intend to be objectively fact-stating, the religious fictionalism isn't the other way. They defend a non-realist view about the religious sentence, but they pretend to defend that the sentence they are truth up and they are non-reducible, in the sense that they pretend to defend the substantiality of the religious sentence, but saying that this religious sentence do not try to be intended to be objectively fact stating, but they say that the sentence are true or false inside of the fiction in question. For example, for the sentence that says that talk about the resurrection of Jesus Christ, they are not through objectively. They are just through inside of the fiction of the Christian fiction in the Bible. And then I don't know how to explain what the fictionalism is, but the fictionalism is defended in a very different way of the domains in philosophy as of the other people talk, and obviously a bit regularly it says that a speaker can defend some theory without necessity to believe in the content of that theory, which is to try to defend the religious fictionalism, that religious sentences are substantial, meaningful, but the people that accepts this religious sentence not necessarily has to believe in the content of this sentence. In the fictionalism, we can differentiate between hermeneutic and the revolutionary, in the sense that the hermeneutic says that the regularly debate about some domain, people accepts that the fiction of this debate, in the sense that they pretend to say that the regular speakers of that domain accept that they do not believe in the content of the domain of discussion, but they recognize that they are talking about the fiction. Revolutionary says that the best way to interpret or to discuss this particular debate is accepting a fictionalist view about that debate. Inside of the religious fictionalism, there are positions that are hermeneutic and the others that are revolutionary. This religious fictionalism has been defended by different philosophers in the last decades, and the core thesis of these religious fictionalisms is that they pretend to defend the meaning of the religious sentence, and also defending the importance of the morally intellectual legitimate this religious sentence, which are not objectively fact stated, and that they, but also that they are truth up in the sense that they are true or false inside of the fiction. In the very same sense that the some sentence refers to fictional characters, in the religious fictionalism, they defend that the different sentence of the religious sentence refer to fictional characters which are true or false inside of the fiction. And then they pretend to say that being or accepting some religion is just playing the game of the religion, in which implies accepting certain moral, social, subjective benefits that perhaps are something essential to the human nature, depending on which kind of fictionalism are you defending. But the core idea is that people which are engaging in some religion, they are accepting to being part of that religion. They are immersing in that religion, and they accept this fiction in the sense that they are immersed. They are people that accept the rule of the games, and then they are accepting the moral and social values, rules that the religion implies. And then there are people that discuss what happens with sentence like the first that says that God created the universe. And for example, Le Pot says that he introduced a new operator, which is in the fiction that, or according with the fiction that, in which he rephrased the sentence saying that according to the Christian fiction, God created the universe. In the sense that the first sentence is analyzed just inside of the Christian fiction. And he says that any given theological statement P is true if and only if it is true in the theological fiction that P. In the sense that he says that all the religious sentences are just a façon de parler, but the speakers are just making it were true. They are just making believe in the sentence. And then the speech acts involved in this religious sentence are just a pretense. They are pretending to asserting something, but they are not asserting in the full sense. There are other solutions like Lipton that says that there is an immersion in that acceptance in the religious domain, and the speakers are immersed in that fiction, that they do not believe in the contra proposition. They are just accepting. They are just making quasi-assertions, just pretending to assert something. And then there are different motivations to accepting this religious fictionalism. Le Pot, Eichelman, Lipton, something more, says that they implies some moral values, some social acceptance, some human flourishing to accepting this religious sentence without the necessity to accept to believing in that content. But accepting this religious sentence imply some pragmatic benefits for the speakers or the practitioners. There are other more hermeneutic religious fictionalism, which is based in the work of Miguel de Unamuno and explained by Alberto Oya, in which says that this tendency to creating these religious stories, religious or theological fictions has, because they imply some important sentimiento trágico de la vida, which entails some spiritual research, which is innate from the human beings, and they are just creating these fictional stories because they are fully necessary for the internal life of the speakers. But it is just a fiction which is created from a human necessity in some sense. Just for illustrate, for example, these two paintings from José de Rivera, in which one is referring to the myth of Sisyphus, in which we say that it is just a fictional character, and another that is about Jesus and Saint Joseph, in which we're trying to differentiate these two different paintings from accepting that one is more realistic than the other, which is the Sisyphus. But for the religious fictionalists, they say that these two paintings are referring from the same ontological status of the objects, which are just fictional characters. One is the Jesus and Joseph, and another is Sisyphus. But all of these representations are representations of the same entities, which are just abstract entities, which are fictional characters of by some specific fiction, which in one is the Bible and the other is the Greek mythology. And then there are important criticisms to make into religious fictionalism. My criticism or challenge is based in other challenge to religious fictionalism. For example, Alberto Hoyas makes an emotional challenge to religious fictionalism, in which he says that if religious fictionalism accepts that religious entities are just fictional entities like abstract objects, and that regular Christian practitioners say that they are in personal and loving communication with God or Jesus, and then this implies some challenge in the sense that how someone, this religious fictionalist, could explain that someone can be in a personal and a loving communion within a fictional entity. It seems that there is no clear response on how someone could be in a personal and a loving communion with some entity that is just an abstract and a fictional entity. The religious fictionalists cannot explain at full this kind of question. Alberto Hoyas do not pretend to make a response, or he's not responding to this challenge. I will try to pose a new challenge based on the ontology of artifacts, and I will try to make a response. Changing a little bit the topic, if we discuss about the ontology of artifacts, it's very habitual to say that, for example, a knife is a knife because by having the proper function to be a knife, which is cutting something. But some philosophers say that a knife is possible to malfunction, in the sense that if knife it's physically possible to repair it in order to realize the proper function adequately. And independently of what makes an artifact being artifacts, if they are the intentions or the use of the users, there isn't a special link between the kind and the function. What makes a knife being a knife is to realize or perform adequately the function of the knife, which is to cut something. But there isn't a problem with some specific subclass of artifacts, which is based on amulets and other religious artifacts. That, for example, Beth Preston's makes this phantom function problem, in which says that there are cases in which implies amulets and religious objects that are cases where an item of material culture is constitutionally incapable of performing a function that it's widely taken to have. But for example, if what makes an amulet is to be protected from evil spirits, it seems that amulets can be incapable to performing this kind of function. And then she says, in order to resolve the problem, then phantom functions that are some functions with proper functions, but cannot be never being performing. An amulet has a phantom function, which is to protecting from evil spirits, and this is an appropriate function, but cannot be performing by any token of the type of the amulet. But she says that this can explain why the artifacts are used and reproduced in a society, and explain some phenomenological experience of the users. And she's beginning to focus on the mechanical functions of the amulets. And then she pretends to defend a materialistic sociogeneric view of religious artifacts, in the sense that they are material objects, but they are just depending on the questions of the society, but they are fully material objects. In that sense, Preston defends that there is phantom functions and that the amulets exist, but they are just having phantom functions. Katherine Kozlicki, some years ago, makes an criticism from the Preston views and the other views in the ontology of artifacts, in who she says that if amulets has the functions to protect the evil spirits, or if holy water has the function to purify power, and if she accepts that artifacts kind are determined by their functions, and then the phantom functions cannot be functions, because it's impossible for any token of the type in question to perform adequately the associated function to this kind. And then she says that it's better to classify those material objects like amulets or religious artifacts according with the actual or possible functions that they can perform, because she accepts that functions are just mechanical. And in that sense, Kozlicki says that holy water is no more than ordinary water. They have the very same functions, they have the very same internal structure, and then holy water is reducible to ordinary water. And the amulets, the function that they can perform, they are just function like decorative objects. And then amulets are just reduced to these ordinary or ornamental objects. Then he defends a certain eliminativist or identity view about religious artifacts, or this holy water is reduced to just ordinary water, or amulets are reduced to other kind of artifacts in virtue of the functions that he can mechanically perform. In that sense, Kozlicki defends that there are no phantom functions because these functions cannot be never been performed, and the amulets do not exist because the functions associated with the amulets cannot be performed by the tokens of the type. And then I think that this poses an important challenge from to the religious fictionalist, because religious fictionalist tries to defend a complete view about the different religions. If amulets and the other religious artifacts are very controversial in the debate of the ontology of artifacts because they have different associated functions that cannot be performed, or there are people that say that these religious artifacts, in fact, they are not they do not exist. The religious fictionalist has to take the problem in order to resolve how these religious artifacts exist, which is their ontological status, because the religious artifacts are really important from the religious people engaged in some fictional story. And then also fictional stories reproduce and use different religious artifacts, and they have to explain which is exactly the religious the relation between the religious artifacts and the function, and how exactly they are used. The point in question is that a religious fictionalism is not a complete story if they cannot explain which is the ontological status from the objects they are essential from their fiction. Like in the Christian fiction, they are the crucifixes, holy water, etc., etc. They have to explain which is the ontological status from these objects, and if this object has phantom functions or other functions. And just in order to mention, I think that the religious fictionalist has or can explain the ontological status of this kind of religious artifacts based in an immaterialist view, in the very same sense that they defend that the religious entities are just fictional entities like abstract entities. I think that they can defend that the religious artifacts are very similar to the fictional artifacts that defends in the fictional stories. Crucifixes are just a material, material manifestations from some set of fictional religious sentence from some specific religious fiction, in the sense that they can defend that religious artifacts are similar to poems, song, Bible, or Jesus Christ, in the sense that all of them are fictional entities which are just abstract artifacts, in the sense that they are created, but they are just created like a story in order to perform certain function. That perhaps the religious fictionalist could say that crucifix or holy water doesn't have the function to be in a purified power, but the function is just more like being in communion with the other people inside of the religion, or that this kind of artifact just have some social functions related with some specific religious fiction, which is the Christian fictions, Muslim fiction, different fictions inside of the. I don't explain all the differences between the religious fictionalism, but there are reasons to preference this kind of view, in the sense that they do not imply a reductive analysis of the religious artifacts. This is defending that religious artifacts are very important, but these are just abstract entities, in the sense that a crucifix, it's not just a piece of matter on a decorative element, because there isn't a difference between being a crucifix, which is part of the fiction it's just part of the Christian fiction, and a decorative element is not part of the Christian fiction. And then I think that they can explain the different functions that place the amulets or the religious artifacts inside of the fiction in question, in order to explain better the social function that are immersed in the different religious fictions. In that sense, I pretend to defend that the phantom functions do not exist, because amulets do not pretend to protect from evil spirits. They are just making the pretense to being protected from evil spirits. It's just a pretension, in the sense that people immersed in those fictions are making believe that amulets are just making believe that they're protecting from evil spirits, but not necessarily the users of the amulets has to believe in the content of the of this question. They are just making a belief about the protecting to evil spirits. And I have different criticism to this proposal, but I will not explain. This is all. Thank you so much.